access. There is an alternate version if you've got your own posters up already and you just want to be able to show the national and regional offers quite quickly, then you can just pop your logo in here and just print that off. A number of people also said that there were a few barriers to getting the printing done. So we've got a provider in place. If you need any support with that, you just need to send us your finalized PDFs with the address, where you want it to go and how many you need, and we could hopefully get it to you within a couple of days. So the next thing I just wanted to quickly show you, there's two things that are on their way. So this is an internal site for health and well-being leads and HR directors. It's private so that we can share the various good practice and resources. You can upload your own things to share with others and have a bit of a chat forum here. We'll obviously put all of our posters and anything else that gets developed in one of the folders here as well. So that's going to be just an internal resource so you can share things without it being public. Now, this is the other thing that's a lot of work has gone into this over the last week or so, and this is essentially it's mainly a signposting site, because the issue was there's so many resources out there, but people just want something that's so simple, don't recreate things, but just really easy and obvious access based on need so that you go to where you need it. So here are a range of pages that meet different needs. So understanding where your needs are, recognizing why it adds stress to have offers that don't really meet what your needs are. You can then go to specific things based on what those needs are for you. And then we've got specific things here for people working in high risk areas. We've got those who are working remotely and shielding. A number of trusts have said staff who are newly working from home are really struggling with some of this. As you'll know, we've talked a number of times about the mental health and wellbeing hub. So there's a quick access, almost if you like, a business card to where to access your local hub, but bearing in mind you can access neighbouring ones as well. This will soon be replaced by a page which is going to incorporate a number of other mental health and wellbeing resources. So it's going to get updated as we go. There's some sort of resources for how to stay well, just really simple things that I'm sure a number of you already have, but you can kind of have these as supplementary. We're going to be adding resources to support parents, but there's a few things on here already. We've got things for those who are shielding. We will be having things soon for those returning from sick leave, and some other things that are sort of going to go on through the next few weeks, hopefully. So just wanted to give you a flavour. It's going to be hitting your inbox, hopefully, this afternoon. And really just feedback would be really helpful. If it's not hitting the need, we'd really like to know, or if there's anything that's particularly useful in it, it's good to know as well. We're working on the funding at the moment to put in place some more kind of bespoke service offers, but at the moment that's the resources as they are. Obviously, we developed a huge amount in the first wave. You'll have your own suites and catalogues, I'm sure, and we will be able to sort of quickly access what's available nationally and regionally. So a lot of what's on here is the national resources, but it's just this really, really easy to find approach.
Thank you so much, Fee. Carol, is there any queries or anything from the chat box?
Not that I can see of. Fee, this was a great overview. So thank you very much for that. And also, we are currently working on a 1 to 2 pager with looking at risk stratification and how to respond to that in terms of the mental health. So soon this is going to also be made available on the website to download, but also we will disseminate it to you as well.
And just to let you know, we're part of a wider team, because I know we had some queries last week about who we are. So we are the Southeast team, and we're part of looking after our people. Fee is head of talent. We have Ali, we have Halal. Obviously, we have Carol as well. Carol, do you want to say, because I know there was a query last week in terms of your role?
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. It is a little bit complicated, so that's no surprise, perhaps. I work directly with Jeanette as the interim head of staff and of Wellbeing, as well as regional program manager for the equality, diversity, and inclusion for NHS ENI. By background, I'm a psychotherapist as well, so any kind of mental health related queries also very often come through me. So yeah, please do reach out if you need to, and I'll be more than happy to support any work that you are doing. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you. So we have a range of skills and expertise. So before we go on to the next phase, I'll just check in with Fee, how Sarah is doing. Any word or okay? Carol, were you able to take us through a mindfulness for around 8 minutes while we give Sarah a little bit of a space? I know I'm putting Carol a bit on because we have a whole program planned for you, which is very interactive, and we're waiting for Sarah Law, our psychologist, to come online.
Okay. Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so before we start, I would suggest just perhaps to mute any sort of notifications and not to write anything in the chat. If you want to take your cameras off, that's absolutely fine as well. And just maybe start with a gentle check-in with yourself. Just notice where you are, how your body makes contact with the surroundings. So perhaps feel your feet on the ground, feel your back against the chair. And just maybe as you take an inhale and exhale, just try to lower your shoulders a little bit, just to give them a bit of a rest. Just very, very slowly start paying attention to your body as a whole. And also, as if you had a torchlight, perhaps start shining some light, starting with your feet, moving upwards through your body. And just notice if there are any areas of tension or perhaps discomfort. And if there are, just send your breath into that place and just exhale that tension as you move in with your breath in and out. And perhaps in a minute, allow yourself for your mind to wander for a little bit. Perhaps think of a nice place that you've visited. Perhaps it might have been your favorite holiday spot. Or perhaps you may be sitting by a stream or meadow. Just let your mind choose an image that you feel comfortable with.
Hello.
And just very slowly and gently guide yourself into that space and engage with it for a little bit. So look around, notice any smells, any sounds. Notice any colors, shapes or textures. And remember that you can come back to this space whenever you wish. It's your space. Now just gently shift your attention back to your breath. There's no need to change anything about it, just notice. And again, slowly shift your attention towards your feet, towards your body. And the points of contact of your body with the space around you. And if you haven't done so already, just gently flutter your eyes open. And welcome back to the space.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for taking us through that session. It does help to ground us, because I know for some of us, this is the first break that we would have had for the day, and we are people that are looking after people. So it's really, really important that we have key focus on our own well-being as well, especially in these times, so that we're able, when we go back into our organizations, to give out. We're hoping that we'll have Sarah with us shortly in the space. But in the meantime, if there's anything anyone wants to put in the chat box, we'll pick it up. If there's any particular queries at this point, you can either raise your hand or unmute. It'll be good just to see everybody for a few seconds. I don't know if people are able to put their cameras on for a short while so we can see everybody, for even if it's for a few seconds before we go back again to mute. Obviously, if you're having your lunch and you want to stay muted. Also, it's good for you all to see Christina as well, who is on Simcox. Christina normally calls everyone in the week and connects, so it's really good for you all to see Halal as well, who is part of the team. And Fia, are we still waiting?
She was on, and I've just seen that she's just popped off. I'm trying to get hold of her again. Oh, is she? No. She's left. I think it might have been her that said hello partway through Carol's session there. So I think she was having problems again, but she was with us.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we are having a bit of a challenge around Teams, so do bear with us. In the meantime, I'll just give you a couple of updates. Carol, do stop me if there's any queries coming through.
She is here now, Jeanette.
Okay, Sarah, welcome to the space.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Oh, Sarah, welcome to the space. And we're so delighted to have you. A lot of planning has gone into this session, and Sarah is a psychologist by background. Sarah, I'll just hand over to you now just to continue the introduction of who you are and to take us through the session.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. And hello, everyone. I do apologise for the glitchy start to today. In fact, I would say, Carol, thank you very much for that very nice bit of grounding, because it certainly helped me to get back into a better state. So yes, thank you for that. And also, I have to say that nice reflective bit when Carol asked us to think about, maybe being by a stream or a meadow. There's actually a particular technique called green-blue therapy, which people use sometimes, where it's about using the presence of water or of nature to really help you get into a good space. So I don't know about you, but that certainly helped me. So thank you for giving me a little bit of time today. Just to remind us all, what we said we were going to do is a starter for 10 on self-care. So as Jeanette said, I'm a psychologist by background. I work with organisations rather than therapeutically. I work with teams, with leadership teams, with wider teams, with individuals. And, self-care is absolutely at the heart of a lot of the work that everyone is having to do now. So what we're going to do is one of the things I just wanted to do was ask everybody here to think about, and we will see if the screen share works, but I'd like to invite everybody here to think about when you are absolutely at your best, when you go into work and the people you're supporting as health and wellbeing leads, they're asking for your help and support, you're able to be creative, you're able to be supportive, you are totally in the right space for your clients, and you know that as a professional, you're really doing a good job. So I'd like you to think about when you are totally at your best, and let's see if we can get this to work. But I'd like you to think about when you're totally at your best, when you know you go into work and you do a terrific job. And maybe we could collect some ideas in the chat about what do you like when you're at your best? And the kind of things I've seen people say on this before is people say, you know, I'm really present for my clients. I really listen well. I get creative with helping them come up with the solutions to their challenges. I'm dependable. A whole raft of different things about when you are totally at your best. But that is one thing to think about. And how do you get to be at your best? What do you do to look after yourself so you can genuinely be in a good place? Because I suspect there's a lot of people out there who really need you right now. And when we think about self-care, there's some quite interesting things that go on in this whole area. So if we think about the definition of self-care, it is the practice of taking an active role in looking after your own well-being and happiness, particularly when things are stressful. And it's not something that you have to force yourself to do. It's not something you don't enjoy, because self-care is a very personal thing. It's about what do we do in a deliberate way to look after our emotional needs, our mental health needs, our physical needs, because obviously all of these things are intertwined. So that idea about self-care being a deliberate practice, it is purposeful because you want to be able to be at your best. You want to be able to, you know, thrive, not just survive. And you're working in the area of health and well-being. You know, there is a little bit of, you know, physician heal thyself. Are we applying some of the things that we are suggesting and supporting others with? So when we consider that, when we think about the idea of well-being, there is a whole load of things out there that can really help us. But I think one of the challenges is our actual beliefs about self-care. So I work with a lot of different people. Last year, I did some work with some charity leaders, for example. And what was fascinating there was when we started to unpack this idea of self-care, a lot of them were saying, well, you know, I can't possibly think about looking after myself. I need to focus on other people. And I've certainly heard this across the healthcare sector as well. Working with different teams, you know, I've worked with multiple teams, whether they're in community, or they're in hospitals, or they're in GP practices, whether it's in physical or mental health, including social care, voluntary organisations. That whole system is designed to support our population. And sometimes the people that work there are so focused on others. And you may recognise this yourself, you may not. But sometimes that focus on other people can lead us to neglect ourselves a little bit. We say, I don't have time. You know, other people are far more important, or it feels a bit indulgent. I've heard, you know, oh, taking care for myself. Oh no, that just feels wrong. I feel guilty about it, which is one thing. And yet, if we cannot get ourselves into a good place, we're unable to deliver the work, to support our families, to support our friends, to be there for other people. So one of the things that we need to think about is that sense of consideration. What do we believe about it? If you were to think about, what does self-care mean for me? What's going on in your head when you think about it? So this was set up as a starter for 10. So I've got a number of different things that I just wanted to talk through. I also
Sarah, sorry, we can't see you. You've gone off.
Oh, that's a weird thing.
We can't see your image yet.
Oh, Teams is definitely playing up then. Are we back?
Can see you now. Yeah.
Okay, great. So very weird. Sometimes technology is great, sometimes it's not. But again, I think that's definitely an area that we have to be kind to ourselves on, because this is our world right now. Thank you, Jeanette. Hopefully we will stay on screen from now on. So this was set up as a starter for 10. So I said I would touch on a whole number of different things, and there may be areas that you want to follow up on. There may be areas where you think, oh, I know that already. Again, I would say the difference between knowing something and actually applying it, knowing something, doing something, can be a huge gulf. You know, we all know that we should eat healthily and not drink and do this, that, and the other, but we're human beings, we're fallible. And actually, one of the things that I think we could all usefully do is be kind to ourselves. Do we look after ourselves? Are we considerate of ourselves? Do we show compassion to ourselves in the same way as we show compassion to other people? There's some really fascinating work around self-compassion and the important part that it plays in overall well-being. So, a number of areas that might be interesting to do some more work on. One is this thing about, what do we understand in terms of how the brain works, the neuroscience? What is the impact of too much screen time? Some of you may have had that sense of the end of a week where you've been on constant team calls, constant screen time. What does that do to you by the end of the week? And then your family says, oh, let's do a Zoom quiz, and you just maybe not have that positive reaction to it. So there's quite a lot that's going on in the brain in terms of the hyper focus that we require to concentrate on a screen. The fact that we may also be putting energy, conscious or otherwise, into self-management if we can see our own image on the screen. That impression management takes mental effort. Trying to look at everyone when you have a whole gallery view is really tough because it's not like real life. So the brain is having to work really hard. And that sense of Zoom fatigue or screen exhaustion or whatever you want to call it is very real. Thinking about, screen time and what goes on, brains actually are quite bad at distinguishing sometimes real life and screen time, which is helpful to us because one of the things that we can do though is say, okay, as part of our self-care, I'm going to think about what am I looking at? So I don't know if any of you saw Winter Watch or you watched Spring Watch or any of that sort of stuff on BBC. They had a whole episode last week, I think it was, about well-being and talking about actually just looking at nature and the impact that has. Some of you might be lucky enough to live close to parks or to the sea or, have a big garden. Fantastic. Others, it just depends on your circumstances. Can you look at plants? Can you look at the natural world? That really helps the brain rather than doing that flat screen stuff all the time if you possibly can. But you know what? Watching a film with lots of nature in it is also helpful. Not as good as the real thing, but it is also helpful. So thinking about the way our brains work, what happens there. The other thing that comes up a lot now is the human need for connection. We're now in lockdown 3. And I certainly miss the social connections that I used to have. It's a different world, we have to get through it. But this idea of actually human beings need other human beings. There's some really interesting work going on with social psychologists primarily, looking at this idea of weak social ties. So it's not necessarily that you get to go to loads of parties and have loads of interactions, but just those micro moments of connecting with another human being really helps. Those little points where this morning I had to have the Virgin engineer around because my phone line was playing up. And he was quite a chirpy chap and we had 2 minutes chit chat, whatever. And it was that micro moment, but it was a real person that I was chatting to, which genuinely helped. So pay attention. Do you get those micro moments? Or do you always do the self-checkout? Do you have an opportunity even to wave at your neighbour over the fence or in the street? Do you nod to your fellow dog owners if you're walking your dog? Micro moments, supremely important when we've got a situation like this. So we need to be able to nourish that sense of self through connection with others. And there was a great analogy somebody came up with, which was you get nutritional social connections, which are with real people, but you also get what could be called like the NutraSuite of social connections. So if you're spending a long time on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever, and you feel like, well, I've got a connection with other people, they're out there, we're all online, but it's vaguely dissatisfying at the end. It's not so nutritional as far as a real social connection is concerned. So as far as self-care goes, how are you managing your social connections? How are you making sure you get sufficient for you, or as much as you can do? Everybody's different. Some people need more, some people need less, but everyone needs something. So what can you do to get that nutritional social connection? The other things that are out there, you know, a whole raft. I mean, great to hear Fiona talking about all the resources that are out there, which is terrific, and being able to use those, signpost your clients, your people you support in all of those matters. There's some really good concepts and frameworks that can help us to analyze and think through what we're doing, what we need to look out for, where the warning signs might be, where we need to focus our actions. And one of the really helpful ones that I've used a lot with different groups is this idea of polarities. Now, some of you may have heard of this before, some of you may use this before, and it's this idea of interconnected pairs that kind of feel like they might be in opposition, but actually you need both sides, both poles, in the for the sake of a greater purpose. So a classic one in healthcare is mental health and physical health. Both of them absolutely crucial for overall human well-being. And what's happened over the years is where there's been a very hard divide and we're just going to focus on the physical health, can have very detrimental effect on the mental health. Where you have more joined up trusts, where you have you know, community of practices out there and people are really looking after both sides, it's massively helpful. So when we think about the idea of polarities, self-care and caring for others is a way of thinking about those. Do we get that balance right? Are we able to manage that tension? So I did some work down in Devon last year with health and social care across the system. So the leaders down there who are working to be really joined up. And one of the things that we explored as a tension, as a polarity, was COVID work and kind of regular healthcare work. Both of them are critical for the population down in Devon. Both need to be done. Some of the leaders there were really, their whole job was switched to focus on COVID because that's what they needed to do. Others were saying, you know what, we had a person there who ran the maternity services and she was saying, look, people still carry on having babies in the middle of COVID. I need to deliver a fantastic maternity service no matter what. So those two sides had to be work in tandem. You know, the maternity services had to be delivered safely in a COVID world. And the way the COVID kind of focus was, it had to pay attention to the resourcing and the staff it was using. Could both work well together? And they did, but it was very helpful to do that analysis about how do we make sure we keep that balance. So that I think can be quite a useful one to explore because it's all about what goes on for you. If we think about actual activities and habits, things that we do as individuals for self-care, you know, all of you will have your ideas on this. Hopefully all of you will have something or maybe a couple of things that you do that makes you feel good, that makes you feel better. It might be walking the dog. It might be just giving yourself 10 minutes in the car when you get back from doing something to just sit and relax. It might be meditation. It might be yoga. It might be your online Bollywood dancing class or Zumba. Who knows? Everybody has their thing. And it's, I think, a big thing with self-care is recognizing the importance of it, looking at what is out there, what are the options. There are many, many options. You know, exercise is really critical. Stuff for your brain is critical. Stuff for your emotional connection is critical. What do we do about our eating and drinking habits? You know, there was quite a little one-liner that came out in the first lockdown, which is at the end of the first lockdown, you're either going to be, you know, a chunk because you've eaten too much, a hunk because you've kept yourself fit the whole way through, or a drunk because you've just hit the Chardonnay. So drunk, chunk, or drunk, none of those are a good option, I would say. You know, do we pay attention to our nutrition, our eating habits, our drinking habits, so that actually we work to make ourselves feel good and not just go for that quick hit? What about sleep? Sleep is critical for self-care. Do we allow ourselves to have good sleep habits? You know, anyone out there who may have hormonal changes going on at the moment, that can play havoc with your sleep, and yet it's crucial. So what can we do to really help ourselves on that score? There's, you know, very specific things like keeping a gratitude diary, volunteering, doing stuff for other people, which genuinely help people to feel better. And there's lots of evidence around that. And that will be totally, you know, a personal factor as well. What I wanted to do was give people time in small groups just to share, what do you do for your self-care? What works for you? Because it will be different.